Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you come in. Here I am, pooping, like we all do. We all poop, you know that. And our poop does amazing things. But you know whose poop does really amazing things? Worms. You didn't know that? Well, you're about to learn. I'll be with you in a second. There are all kinds of worms. There are the Hollywood worms, like Earthworm Jim, the A-Team, worms that create viruses on your computer, the rollerblading worm, the rare blue earthworm, and yes, even this quite scary one that looks to be of Asian descent. But to give you really what we're talking about earthworms that can work for us in the garden. They're blind and deaf, no legs, no feelers, no stomach, but the stuff that comes out their back end is quite valuable. Worm poop is a valuable compost called vermicompost. Vermi is just a Latin prefix that means of or relating to worms, so don't be too scared off. It's not that scientific. The worm compost is higher in microbes, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, bacteria, and great nutrients that promote the growth of plants in your garden. Worms not only create more nutrients with their compost, but they also provide good aeration for soil and add water holding capacity to already good soil. Permaculture co-founder Bill Mollison, we all love him, points out that by sliding in their tunnels, earthworms act as an innumerable army of pistons pumping air in and out of the soils on a 24-hour cycle. And in fact, as long ago as 1881, Charles Darwin, love him or hate him, he wrote a lot, said, "It may be doubted whether there are many other animals which have played so important a part in the history of the world, as have these lowly organized creatures." Darwin also came up with some crazy statistics with numbers and worms. He said that on a plot of arable land, it contains up to 53,000 worms per acre. That's 13 per square meter. And if you double these numbers and make them bigger, it pretty much came out to say that the weight of the earthworms beneath a farmer's soil could in fact be greater than that of his livestock up on the surface. So really good soil has lots of worms. Good. So some key things about vermicompost, what it is. It needs oxygen. They need to breathe, so they can't get too hot. They can't get too cold. They just need lots of holes within your worm compost system so they can breathe. Worm composts need no turning. It's not like a big pile that needs turned or aired out that way. As Bill Mollison said, they're creating their own aeration. Worm compost needs darkness. Worms will dig down to avoid the light. They will come near the surface only usually to feed, so you gotta keep a cover with cardboard, wood, or some sort of cover on top of your worm compost to keep the light out. Worm compost needs food in small amounts and very frequently. If you check your worm compost and there are worms visible on the top, that means it's time to feed them. Worm compost needs constant temperature between 15 and 20 degrees Celsius. No extremes, so if you have a lot of food waste in your worm bin, it may need some carbon to make it a little hotter. Try some wood or newspaper and cardboard. Lots of cardboard. They love that. They love newspaper, that sort of thing. Where are worms found? They're found mainly on what's known as hotspots. Hotspots are places where there are lots of microbes, roots, under decaying logs, under the regular compost heaps that we have, or actually in compost heaps. There's lots of good nutrients. That's where they'll be found. That's where they lay their eggs. That's where they're going to reproduce. So, numbers. Calculations about ratios and such may drive us all crazy. So with worms, it's more about variety. Although they don't have stomachs, their digestive system enriches the already decomposed nature of whatever it is they're eating. It's their gizzard that grinds the soil, sand, food, and all that stuff into small particles. So this is all great, Scott, but what does this mean for Valdelama here in Portugal? Well, right now we have 4 experiments going. Right now is in February 9th, today. We have 4 experiments. On the science side, we're looking at what material works best as the container for the worm compost and what method of mixture works best. We've tried a couple things. Here we are in the stufa, or greenhouse, and we have our first experiment, which is in styrofoam. Let's see what we have. This was made around January 21st by Helder. It has sort of a lasagna method with the layering of compost and dirt and straw on top. It's styrofoam, so it's doing very well, as you can see, very rich soil. I even pulled out a couple worms here. You can see them. There's one right there. He's working out very well. He's eating, he's pooping. We like him. This is our second experiment. As you can see, a system set up to collect worm tea, the liquid at the bottom. Chiseled out with a pocket knife, a custom-made spout to collect the worm tea, which can often be used as fertilizer. Now we keep a black cover on top to keep it dark. And this one was made around January 28th by Helder and myself. Similar method with the layering, very much a lasagna style. There's a lot of rocks around the hole at the bottom, not a lot of soil, so the worms aren't going to go all the way down there. They're going to stay towards the middle. The hope is that they're going to turn all of this dirt into usable soil within about 3 months.
Worms love the dark. They eat, they run around, they go to the clubs, they have fun, they do whatever worms do, and they poop, which we like. But they do it in the dark. Check it out. This is our inside experiment.
So yes, in the dark. This one was going before we all got here. It's a little smaller. Lots of compost, lots of worms. It's working very well. They're eating up a lot of food. We're transplanting a lot of the worms to start new experiments from here. So that's the way this one's kind of going. So here we are on the site of yet another experiment. This one's going to be a little different. We've collected some different elements. First, let's go get the donkey shit. That is Cati and Livigno. They may be good for farm vibe, and they are, but they also produce one of the best decomposers we have on this farm. That's right, manure. Now, none of the other experiments have this kind of donkey shit in their in the worm compost, but these ones, we're gonna put the goodness of these two guys in our worm compost to see what happens. Okay, we're back from getting donkey shit. Now we have to get kitchen scraps. Let's go get those.
More cardboard. Instead of green material, we'll add celluloses. That's the thing they like the most. Celluloses and lignin that you can find on dry stuff, like dry leaves or cardboard.
And kitchen scraps.
And kitchen scraps, but we should avoid orange. Orange, they are not easy for the worms to eat.
Mm.
We can also add some newspaper because they like to read the news, and they like to lay their eggs between the lines.
The bad articles.
The bad articles,
right.
They'll poop on them.
About monoculture.
Yeah.
Yes. Good. And one more element. We have dirt and cardboard. There's two more elements. Dirt and cardboard. We're going to mix these all together, just like our resident expert, Helder Valent, said. So, mix them all together in this little area that I've reinforced with cardboard and wood. They're good insulators for heat. This area is kind of in the shade in the afternoon, so during the summer it won't get too hot. Worms don't produce their stuff when it's too hot. So, I'll show it to you. Check it out, check it out. Wood around the outside, cardboard, rocks on the inside. So we're gonna layer all these in here. We're gonna mix them up. Dirt, manure, kitchen scraps, cardboard, and our usual suspects, worms. I try them in. Aqui. Wish them well. Say goodbye, little worms. Do well.
Hey.
Say
Goodbye, little worm. See?
aqui.
Aqui. Little ali, a little aqui, mais pouco aqui. Go, worm, go, 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 go. Be no worms. is ready.
What do you think? Portuguese approved?
Approved?
You like?
Like, yes, my friend.
We didn't have newspaper, so we gave them the instructional manual to a pressed sandwich, toasty sandwich maker. So they're going to become smart on that and hopefully poop on it. So there you go. We've added the worms to this experiment. Give it 3 months, give it 4 months. We will add more food. Very little, very often. That's the key. So, worm compost outside. Let's make it happen.
Good job, my friend.